She didn't scream when she found her husband face down in the Powder River. Grief had frozen her then, hard and silent. But she did scream the next morning, when Eli McCrae rode out of the dust like a ghost the world had nearly forgotten. Lily Hart had been a widow for 3 months. In Sheridan, that was long enough for people to stop using your name and start calling you, the poor Hart woman. But the fear in her eyes that morning made even the ranch hands look twice as she rode through town, her dress torn, fingers trembling around the reins. She didn't stop for the blacksmith, or the 2 men who spat tobacco near her horse outside the saloon. She didn't slow when the preacher nodded at her with that infuriating pity she no longer trusted. She rode straight past everyone and everything, until she reached the one ranch folks swore belonged to a man who feared absolutely nothing. If Eli McCrae turned her away, she would have nowhere left to go. Most people in Sheridan spoke his name only in low voices. Some called him a quiet storm. Others said he was the reason the Bozeman Trail still had law at all. But everyone agreed on one thing: if danger chased you and you had no one else to run to, you went to McCrae's place and prayed he was in a decent mood. Lily did not pray. She swung off her horse, boots thudding against dirt, and strode toward him as he fed salt to a young roan. Eli looked up slow as sunrise, and in that single glance she felt exposed, like he could see every lie anyone had ever told her. For the first time since her husband's funeral, someone wasn't staring at her black dress. They were looking at her. He asked if she'd been followed. She nodded. Then everything poured out: the cut fences at her ranch near the Bighorn foothills, the rocks tossed into her well, the shadow pacing outside her window at midnight, the voice whispering that a woman alone couldn't keep land in the Wyoming Territory. Eli listened without blinking. Dust rolled across his boots. The roan flicked its ears, uneasy, as if even the horses could sense trouble coming. And this wasn't trouble that brought rain. When Lily finally said the name Harlan Voss, Eli's jaw tightened just once, like an old bullet shifting under scar tissue. Everyone knew that name: cattle king, land thief, and the man who insisted her husband's death had been an accident. She stepped closer. Her voice cracked as she said she wasn't looking for pity. Someone wanted her land, someone wanted her gone, and she needed a man who didn't scare easy. Eli wiped his hands on his jeans, looked toward the mountains, then back at her like he was weighing how much fight she had left. His next words were quiet, the kind that decide a story before it even begins. "Are you ready for the truth that might come with this?" Lily met his eyes. "What if the truth is worse than the man who killed my husband?" Eli saddled up without another word, and she rode beside him back to Hart Ranch, trying not to think about the look in his eyes when she'd said Harlan's name. It hadn't been fear. It had been something colder: memory. By the time they arrived, the sun burned low over the plains, sharpening every shadow. Lily talked to steady herself, showing him the leaning fence, the scattered hay, the thump she'd heard behind the barn. Eli said little, just crouched over footprints she hadn't noticed. When he straightened, she saw it in his face. Someone had been there. He walked to the porch where a heavy hay bale leaned against the storage box she'd tried, and failed, to drag earlier. He tested the frame and smirked. "Too big," he said. "Sit on it so I can check the braces." His tone made her roll her eyes, though her pulse jumped anyway. She lifted her skirt just enough not to trip and moved to sit. That was when she heard it. A dry, shaking rattle, soft, deadly. A fat rattlesnake slid from the straw, head rising, eyes locked on the place she was about to sit. Lily stumbled back, nearly falling. Eli caught her around the waist before she hit the ground, her hands gripping his shirt, her breath trembling against his chest. One clean shot cracked the air. The snake dropped dead. If she had moved one heartbeat sooner, the story would have ended right there. But when Eli picked up the snake, his expression changed. Lily felt something cold trace her spine. A rope mark. Someone had tied the snake, carried it, and placed it exactly where she would sit. Her fear turned into a slow, rising anger she thought had died with her husband. Eli inspected tracks near the porch, scuffs, broken straw, a boot print with a distinct notch in the heel. She'd seen boots like that before. "Harlan's trail boss," she whispered. Eli didn't confirm. He didn't need to. They both knew whose print that was. They weren't waiting for the next snake. They weren't trusting the sheriff, either. They would set the trap themselves. At Eli's direction, Lily rode into Sheridan the next morning looking exhausted, defeated, exactly the way Harlan liked seeing her. She passed the saloon where he lounged most days. Pretended not to notice him. Which only made him watch her harder. He stepped onto the boardwalk. Roped her into polite conversation. She told him she'd barely slept. Told him about the snake. Told him Eli had gone home and she'd be alone that night. She even said the line Eli had coached her through. "Maybe you were right about selling. A woman can't hold a place like mine forever." Harlan smiled like he was already counting her land as his own. By sunset she was back at Hart Ranch, where Eli and two trusted cowboys were hidden across the property. The house was staged, one lamp lit, front door cracked open just slightly, the picture of careless vulnerability. Lily sat at the table gripping the pistol Eli gave her, reminding herself she wasn't bait. She was part of the trap. Hoofbeats broke the silence. 3 horses. Slow. Intent. A man stepped through the door with a bandana at his neck and a grin sharpened by experience. "Pack your things," he said. "Come quiet." She swung a wooden block into his face. Fired her pistol once into the floor. The single shot brought Eli out of the shadows like lightning. But behind the barn, he found something unexpected, a man shaking, hands raised, terrified rather than dangerous. He confessed everything, the threats, the snake, the plan to burn the ranch, Harlan's forced orders. And why Harlan wanted her land. A new cattle route. A shortcut that sliced straight through Hart Ranch. Worth a fortune. By dawn the man's confession had the sheriff dragging Harlan Voss off his polished porch in front of half the town. For the first time in months, Sheridan looked at Lily with respect, not pity. That evening she and Eli sat on the same hay bale where the snake had waited. Eli said life didn't let you choose the hard days, only how you stood through them. She told him she was tired of standing alone. He took her hand, tracing the calluses she'd earned, slow and careful, before folding her fingers into his. "Sometimes life knocks you down so you can see who lifts you back up. Sometimes surviving is its own kind of victory. And sometimes the person you trust most arrives the moment you stop running."